Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Toolbox. And had a really challenging question that came in that I'm excited to answer. And the question asks, um, is there a difference between a human spirit and soul? And if so, how does the mind, heart, soul, and spirit line up in the believer? So, talk about a question that you would stump a seminary professor with. So it caused me to do a little bit of research and get my head around what it is that I think is accurate scripturally. I mean, I kind of had my thoughts, but this kind of confirms them. I'll say that there are basically three main views that have been believed in historically when it comes to how a person's body is made up. A view that's real popular in conservative Protestant circles is called trichotomism. And basically, that says that the human body is made up of three elements: a body, soul, and spirit. Or I would say a human person is made up of body, soul, and spirit. The body being the physical aspect of somebody. In Greek, it's sarx for flesh, or soma for body. Um, the soul being the psychological aspect of somebody, coming from the Greek word psyche, and then spirit coming from the Greek word pneuma. So body, soul, and spirit, really influenced by Greek metaphysics. The challenge, the problem I have with this view in particular is that it doesn't necessarily reflect um, the wholeness of what I see in Scripture, as how Scripture, especially the Old Testament, refers to the understanding of a human. Another view that is perhaps by default the most popular is dichotomism or dualism, which basically says that a person is a body and a soul, right? And so most people understand that you die, you leave your body behind, your soul goes to heaven. Um, Again, I'm not sure that this view really accurately reflects the fullness of how kind of Scripture speaks of a person. You know, the Bible will use terms interchangeably sometimes, will compare and contrast terms sometimes that they've used interchangeably before, so it's tricky to really pin this one down. So some go to kind of a monism view where a person is just a self, right? Body, soul, and spirit all kind of mashed up into one, and they don't necessarily make distinctions. And I think that gets a little closer to an Old Testament understanding of Scripture, but a true full out monism isn't. It's a little bit more difficult to line up with how the New Testament talks about a person. So there's a theologian by the name of Millard Erickson, and he advocates for an idea called conditional unity, which is really similar to monism. Um, and I guess an analogy you could think of would be like water. How water is made up of two hydrogens and an oxygen, right? So water can't be water if you remove one of those elements. You have to have all three of those elements together in the right way to actually make up a water molecule. And the same is true, basically, he says, for a human being, that we are body, soul, and spirit all together, unified. You can't separate them. You can't have a disembodied spirit. Or if you do, because the New Testament does talk about an intermediate state kind of in Corinthians, it seems like it's abnormal. And the anticipation of the Apostle Paul is that we will be fully clothed, we will be given new bodies. The resurrected Jesus is a fleshly Jesus. He's in the flesh. It's not he's not just a spiritual being. Um, so it tells me that that's how God designed us and wants us to be for eternity is this unique mixture of body, soul, spirit that can't be separated. The intent is not to be so. That keeps us from being people who try to torture the body and say that everything physical is bad, right? You know, some religious sects that will do that. Um, but that we treasure the body, we treat it with respect because it's a gift from God. It's part of who we are, and our bodies are part of what makes up our spiritual experience, and our spiritual experience is part of what makes up our fleshly experience. They're all intermingled together. So the last part of that question is, how do the mind, heart, and soul and all those things line up in the believer? Well, they all work together. I think they all overlap. I think it's really difficult to divide and single each one of those things out. It's kind of like a Venn diagram where you've got all these pieces, and we exist in the sweet spot of those where they all overlap together to give us the fullness of our experience of life and God. So I know it's really tricky and confusing, and maybe that didn't make any sense at all, but I hope that kind of helped answer the question, and I appreciate the heart behind that and the challenge behind that as well. So thanks for that. As always, if you have questions for me, just drop them in the toolbox. I'll answer them next week. Thanks.